And to wrap up things this week, gang, we have to make a brief mention of Harry and Meghan, the former Prince and Duchess of England, who, of course, completely reneged on their titles and responsibilities and are now trying to make it as grade E Hollywood low-life celebrities. This Sunday, they are scheduled. Well, actually, no, the interview has already happened. They've given an interview with Oprah, and this Sunday it's actually going to air on cable for the people who still have cable, and it's going to stream several places. And it's all going to be about, pretty much, it's Meghan's show. It's going to be her struggles in the royal family, and everyone is just going to be sobbing boo-hoo. People, but let me just be honest, people here who feel sorry for Meghan, like, oh, she was so abused, she was, they bullied her, etc., etc. I'm sorry, but I have absolutely no sympathy for her because she was actually part royalty. She married into genuine royalty. I mean, Jamie, she was a duchess. That wasn't just a title that fans gave her or some publicity manager gave her. She was an actual duchess. She was married to an actual prince. I mean, no disrespect to artists like Michael Jackson, very, very talented. The so-called king of pop. Clark Gable was the king of Hollywood. Elvis, of course, was the king. But those titles were pretty much meaningless. It meant that they were big shots. It meant that they were the best in their business. It didn't actually mean that they ruled a kingdom. Here, those titles actually meant that. Those titles actually meant what they were supposed to mean. So, Meghan saying that, oh, it was so confining, it was so constricting life in the palace because you were expected to do everything a certain way and it was just so terrible. You knew that going in. If you didn't, you were either naively foolish or foolishly naive. Take your pick. And I'm sorry, Harry is the poorest excuse of a man that there is right now, or one of them. Harry is allowing his blushing bride to talk trash on his own flesh and blood, his family, his grandmother, his grandfather, and he doesn't say a thing. In fact, they continued on with the interview, with the scheduled interview, even though Prince Philip, Harry's grandfather, Queen Elizabeth's husband, at 99 years of age, had to have a heart surgery. They didn't postpone the interview. They didn't say, oh, hey, we've had, my grandfather's going in at 99 for heart surgery. We're going to have to hold on this. It wouldn't be polite. It wouldn't be good, even if you don't go to see how your own grandfather is doing. It wouldn't be good to talk trash about my family while he's in the hospital, recovering from the hospital, or hell, he's 99 years old. There's no guarantee that he was going to survive the surgery. Now, according to the New York Post, the palace says that he is recovering. So, thoughts and prayers to Prince Philip, because, you never want anyone to die under those circumstances, no matter what their station in life is, or no matter, whether they're British royalty or commoners. You just don't want that. But the real point that caught my attention was that Oprah again reinforced the idea of your truth, my truth. This story comes from the UK Spectator, written by a woman, Melania McDonough. I think I'm pronouncing her name right. I should be ashamed since I'm very Irish on one side of my family, and she is an Irish woman living in London. And this piece in the Spectator is about Harry and Meghan's interview, and they've been putting bits and pieces of the interview out, right, gang? And so at one point, Oprah asks Meghan, how do you feel about the palace hearing you speak your truth today? Now, this is not something unusual for Oprah. In 2018, McDonough reminds us at the Golden Globes, Oprah said this, quote, Speaking your truth is the most powerful tool we all have, and I'm especially proud and inspired by all the women who have felt strong enough and empowered enough to speak up and share their personal story. She was talking about the newly inaugurated Me Too movement. Now, everyone and their grandma has talked about the inanity of your truth, my truth. Since there is none, there is only the truth. You can't have your truth and I have my truth. Because if we did, then it wouldn't automatically be the truth. And Meghan does a great job here in The Spectator talking about the difference between your truth and your opinion. You can have your opinion, but you can't have your truth. But of course, everyone gravitates to that because, well, I'm standing firm in my truth. It sounds as if you're standing in something firm, implacable, unending, unbending. When really, all you're saying is that you're standing in your opinion, but it doesn't have the same ring, does it, gang? So I can just repeat what everyone else has said, that it's asinine, it's horrible, and it is so indicative of the touchy, ooey, gooey, feely, just sugary slop, which our culture has dissolved to. In that, well, everyone has their truth, which is a lie, by the way. Everyone doesn't have their truth. Everyone doesn't have their truth. Do you think those guys, like the QAnon shaman, for example, do you think that the court is just going to let him off? He was arrested, by the by. Do you think the court is going to let him off when he says, well, I was just expressing my truth? The idea of having your truth is only for the select few. And that really brings me to the point that I wanted to highlight today. This is another topic that really deserves its own video, but I am going to talk a little bit about it now. When the idea of your truth, my truth, is normalized and even solidified into society, then it leads inevitably to one of those truths being made the dominant narrative of society. Because, I mean, it's inevitable, really, at that point. Because think of it like this, gang. If every single 300 and however many people there are in the country right now, 328 million, 348 million, something like that, we'll say 350 million. If every single one of those people has their own personal truth, which are as true and as right and as good for them as they are for anybody else, even when they contradict each other, which they will, then you don't have a society. You simply have a swarm of atoms crashing and bashing into each other, because then how can we even do business? How can we even conduct business in that sense? Think about it. Think about it. I have a $5 bill, but my truth says that it's a $20 bill. Well, that's not going to work, because the guy at the cashier over there, he says his truth is that it's a $5 bill. And then someone else comes up and says, well, and his truth is a $100 bill. $100 bills are now, they look exactly like $5 bills. Or even better, he'll take a black marker and he'll just put a couple of zeros by each of the fives, and he'll say it's a $500 bill now, and Abraham Lincoln is now on the $500 bill. That's my truth. It's impossible. Society can't operate like that. So that's one reason why one of those myriad truths will have to supplant all the others and become the official narrative. But it even goes deeper than that, gang, because if every single truth is just as good as anyone else's, and again, it would offend the democratic sensibilities to say that one truth was better than the other, at least at first. Stay with me here, gang. If one truth is just as good as another truth, then why shouldn't one truth be made the first among equals, as they said at the beginning of the old Roman Empire? And that's exactly where we've gotten today. The left, and you can see this even in the left, which has for years now been talking about the sanctity of my truth, your truth, is now all of a sudden about facing and saying, well, there is no such thing as your truth. There's only the truth. There's a very prominent leftist that I follow on Twitter named Amy Siskin. I think she lives in Maryland. The things that I do to try to stay actually informed about what everyone is saying. And she has actually several times on her Twitter platform said that, well, there's no such thing as your truth. There is only the truth. And it's very telling that the same people again who have been preaching that everyone has their own truth and you have to stand in your truth are now saying that there's only the truth. Because what they're now admitting, gang, is that their narrative has actually finally become entrenched, firmly entrenched. They have the culture, and now they have the government, and now the two are wedded tightly. So now there is no more need for talking about your truth and my truth. Now all we need is the narrative, quote unquote, the truth. It's very much like how Soviets did. The Soviets and every other revolting group in the world, they have tried to dress themselves up in non-offensive language. And then as soon as the tables were turned and they were the dominant ones, they quickly reversed course and said, no, we're not playing by those rules anymore. You don't have your truth anymore. There's only the truth, and the truth is what we say it is. You saw the same thing. I remember this very clearly after the 2004 elections, which was the second election that I was actually consciously aware of, when the Republicans, Bush 2 had been reelected, and the Republicans, I think, had actually even increased their majorities in the House and in the Senate. And for 2 years, the left was talking about quote-unquote minority rights. The Republican majority, they couldn't make up the rules in the Senate and the House. They couldn't decide to change the rules or make new rules that would benefit them, even though the Constitution says that each chamber of Congress can make its own rules on how it's going to operate, how it's going to take votes, how many votes is needed to pass a certain piece of legislation, etc., etc. No. They couldn't do that because minority rights. The party that was the minority party has special rights. Well, interestingly enough, 2 years later, in 2006, when the Democrats retook the House and they retook the Senate and made Bush to a lame duck president for pretty much the rest of his 2 years in office, you never heard another word about minority rights. Never heard another word. I think there might have been a couple of Republicans who were trying to say, well, minority rights. And the left, quickly squished them. So this is where we are, gang. When Oprah talks about your truth, she is almost a fossil of the past in that regard, because the left is very quickly moving away from the dialogue, from the jargon and the hashtags of your truth and my truth, because it's inevitable. When subjectivism is normalized, then one of those subjective truths will naturally be put in as the official narrative by the people who actually have steam and conviction and spirit on their side. That is the interesting thing that came to my mind reading this story in The Spectator about Oprah, Meghan, and Harry. But gang, I am cutting it off maybe a little early this week. I've got a lot to do to try to get this On the Stone video ready for Monday or Tuesday. I promise. I hope that I promise. Barring any technological difficulties, that video will be up Monday or Tuesday. Thank you for your patience. Really been working hard on this one because I'm trying to give anyone really tools and ways of tools and maybe introductions to ways of thinking that will actually allow us to start resisting and will actually help us start gestating a revolution, which is at this point what we need. So until then, gang, stay safe, stay free, have a great weekend, and I will chat at you all soon. Ciao.